Hey guys, welcome back to another Biblical Victor podcast. In today's episode, we are going to be talking about Romans 8:8. And I apologize if my voice is a little bit raspy. I've been feeling like this for a few days. But let's get right into today's video. Hi, ChatGPT. I want you to be my co-host within today's episode. And within today's episode, we are going to be discussing Romans 8:8. God's plan for you is always the best. Sometimes the process is painful and hard. But do not forget that when God is silent, He is doing something for you. Trust the process.
Absolutely. I'd love to be your co-host. That sounds like a powerful topic. Romans 8:28 is such a great reminder that even when things are tough, there's a bigger picture at play. I can't wait to dive into that and share some insights.
So what does this verse mean?
So Romans 8:28 is basically saying that in all things, God works for the good of those who love him. It's a reassurance that no matter what challenges or difficulties we face, there's a bigger divine plan, and everything ultimately works out for our good. It reminds us to trust the process, even when it's tough.
I love it. And it says, now I even have to go a little bit more in depth talking about it, it says Romans 8:8 states, and we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. This verse is a promise that God orchestrates every event in the lives of believers for their ultimate good, even through difficult circumstances. It is a comfort to Christians, affirming, that they are part of a divine plan and that God has a purposeful, good end goal for those who are called according to his purpose. So, ChatGPT, can you help dissect what this means?
Absolutely. So this verse is really about the idea that everything in life has a purpose, even the tough stuff. It emphasizes that if we love God and are following his calling, there's a bigger divine plan at work. Even when we can't see it, the challenges we face are somehow being woven into a greater good. It's a comforting reminder that we're not going through things randomly. There's a purpose behind it all.
To put it simply, everything happens for a reason. And it says key concepts in Romans 8:8. God's sovereignty. The verse suggests God's ultimate control over all events, working them together for a greater good. So ChatGPT, for someone who is going through a trying, difficult time, how can someone find solace with this verse right here, where it says the verse suggests God's ultimate control over all things, working them together for a greater purpose? So someone who is going through a turbulent, challenging life path right now, how can someone find solace that God really is orchestrating things behind the scenes for their good?
And that's a really thoughtful question. When someone's going through a tough time, it can be hard to see the bigger picture. But one way to find solace in this verse is by remembering that the very essence of faith is trust. Even if we can't understand or see how things are working out, this verse reassures us that there is a greater purpose. It helps to look back on past experiences and see how even difficult moments eventually lead to growth or something positive. It's also comforting to know that we're not alone and that there's a divine plan that's beyond our understanding. Gives a sense of peace and hope.
And then it says, focus on the ultimate good. It is a promise about the final outcome, not a guarantee that every present moment will be pleasant. God uses both good and bad experiences to shape believers.
Exactly. That's a key point. The verse doesn't promise that every moment will be easy or comfortable. Instead, it assures us that in the grand scheme of things, everything will contribute to our ultimate good and growth. It's like a refining process. Sometimes we have to go through challenges to come out stronger and more resilient on the other side. It's definitely a comforting perspective to hold on to.
Then it follows by saying, condition for the promise. The promise is specifically for those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose.
Absolutely. That's an important detail. The verse is a promise specifically for those who have a genuine love for God and are living according to his purpose. It's a reminder that this divine orchestration of good is tied to a relationship and a calling. It encourages us to stay connected to that purpose and trust that through that relationship, everything will work out for the best.
Then it says purposeful sanctification. This involves God using every aspect of a believer's life to make them more like Christ. So what does this mean?
So sanctification is basically the process of becoming more Christ-like in character and spirit. It means that God uses every experience, both the good and the challenging ones, to help us grow and mature in our faith. So even when we face difficulties, they are part of that refining process, helping us become more compassionate, more patient, more loving, and more like Christ in the end. It's a really comforting and empowering idea.
So to close out today's episode, I want to share a little bit about my personal journey, living life with SMA, psychiatric hold experience. I was navigating a very turbulent, turmoiled life path, and I was going through a very, very difficult season, to say the very least. And as I was going through this event, unfortunately, I needed medical intervention that needed for me to be hospitalized for several days. And during this phase, this season, I was undergoing a psychiatric hold. I was placed 5150, which is a penal code for essentially saying you lost in touch. You were not in touch with reality. And essentially my sanity completely was out the window. And there's so much beneath that. That happened. But I wanted to go over this because as I was going through this verse with you guys, it brought up a lot of key moments on how I can bring in and wove my story with these four things right here. It says God's sovereignty. The verse suggests God's ultimate control over all events, working them together for a greater purpose. So as I was navigating this psychiatrical experience, in the moments, personally and professionally, I wasn't doing too well. A lot of my entire world was collapsing. Everything was in chaos, and a person can only bear so much before they snap, before the ugliness of the world gets hold of them. And that's essentially what happened to me. I was just enduring a lot of life. I was trying to bear as much as I could and just keep to myself. And eventually it got hold of the best of me. And it really, really was an ugly experience. But as I was going through this season, little did I know is that God's ultimate control over all events, he was actually working them together for a greater purpose. Little did I know that as I was going through this experience is that he was going to call me to a greater purpose, because as I was navigating this season, I was on medication, antidepressants, and I was recommended to go to therapy and all of these different things, okay? And I tried therapy. It didn't work for me. The medication, I wasn't a huge fan of it. It made me feel a particular way. It made me feel even more not in touch with reality, to say the very least. And from one day to the next, it was literally, I was sedated for several days, and I woke up, and there was some form of divine intervention of an experience where till this day, I cannot quite put into words. I cannot describe what actually occurred and had taken events while I was sedated. And during this process, all I can say is I literally just woke up and Jesus saved my life. All I remember is just waking up and I was like, can I speak to a pastor? Can I speak to a father? And I was like, can I have a Bible? Can I have a rosary? And ever since then, it completely just changed my life. And little did I know is that I like to say the enemy, personally. I don't like to use the word the devil. That's just personally my preference. Same meaning, same symbolism. It's just personal preference. And anyhow, the enemy within tried to take hold of my soul, because my soul he knew how valuable and precious it was. And during this process is God held the ultimate power. He had the final say that God's ultimate control, God taking control over all events. He came, sent his son to save me, which was Jesus Christ. He sent his son to save me during this process. Jesus began to save me while I was, metaphorically speaking, drowning, and Jesus became my lifeline. God had God had ultimate control over all events, and he began to align people that he knew was best for me to help me listen to what I needed to hear. Help me be guided through this season I was navigating. And ultimately, little did I know is the greater purpose in this context was this would begin my journey by sharing my story, sharing my wisdom, creating several brands, podcasts, businesses, a lot of things I'm working on behind the scenes as well. And he's using what the enemy tried to steal from me, tried to ruin me, destroy me. God had ultimate control to say, "Here, son, you may not understand it now, but one day you will." And little did I know, I began creating my personal brand and sharing my story. And having me speaking about this is there is something you are going through. There is something the enemy wants you to feel destroyed, weak. The enemy is going to do its absolute best to have you focus on the wrongs in your life, the ugly things in your life, the chaos that is constantly happening. And the reason why that is because your soul is so powerful. It is filled with immense purpose. That is why the enemy tries its best to try to blind you from the blessings that God has. The blessings that are predestined for you within this lifetime. The gifts, the purpose. And what I am hoping you can hear as I am speaking with you is that if there was nothing great on the other side of what you are currently going through, then why is the enemy trying so hard? It's because you are gifted. You are talented. You are so special in your own unique way that the enemy tries his best to blind you so you do not see these gifts, these talents, these special, unique qualities about yourself. But when you have faith in him, you develop that spiritual connection with God. God has the final say to say, "Hey, follow me, I will lead you through. I will show you what you are put here on earth to fulfill."
That is such a powerful and moving testimony. And it's incredibly inspiring how you've woven your personal experience with that verse. It truly shows how even in the darkest moments, there can be a greater purpose unfolding, and that your journey is a testament to that. It's a beautiful reminder that no matter what we go through, there's always hope and a greater purpose waiting on the other side. Thank you so much for sharing that.
And it says, focus on the ultimate good. It is a promise about the final outcome, not a guarantee that every present moment will be pleasant. God uses both good and bad experiences to shape believers. So the story that I just shared with you guys is it is a promise about the final outcome. The final outcome is, in a unique analogy, is a light at the end of the tunnel. The blessings, the things you desire, the things you long for to help you break through, to help you feel that fresh breath of fresh air. The light at the end of the tunnel is the very thing that you hope you get to reach. You hope you get to see. That is the final outcome. The final outcome is you will make it outside and through this tunnel. But it is not a guarantee that every present moment will be pleasant. There are going to be many life experiences where you are not going to understand. You are going to go through so many different seasons and moments, periods within your life, where as you navigate this process, you are going to often question, why is this happening? Why do you constantly keep putting me through what you are putting me through? You are going to be filled with so many questions and doubts. And the thing is that it is not a guarantee that every present moment will be pleasant. The process is not going to be pleasant. It's going to be very difficult. But this here is going to become a testament to your faith, your character, your strength, your resilience, your belief in a higher power that despite what one is going through, there is a higher being that is orchestrating all of these events for your good, to help utilize these good and bad experiences to shape believers. Believers in knowing everything happens for a reason. Believers in knowing this too shall pass. Believers in knowing that despite what I am going through, I will make it through, because that is a promise about the final outcome.
Absolutely. And that is such a powerful and encouraging message, and really emphasizes that even though the journey may be challenging and filled with moments of uncertainty and discomfort, the ultimate outcome is one of growth, purpose, and fulfillment. It's a beautiful reminder that our struggles are not in vain and that there's something incredible waiting for us on the other side. Thank you for sharing that wisdom and that light with everyone listening.
And the promise is specifically for those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. So the promise is specifically for those who love him. That, as I mentioned earlier, how I was navigating this psychiatric experience, I was so angry with life, with the life I was given, being given a life with a progressive disability that I could not fathom within the moment. Why me? Why are you claim you love me, but you gave me a disability that causes immense pain, both physically, spiritually, emotionally, mentally. You bring me so much pain. And yet you gave me a condition where, as time progresses, you are slowly taking away more of my mobility. You are restricting me more and more as time goes on. As you can imagine, I was so angry with my disability, with the life I was given, with the environment, with everything that was happening within my household. There was professionally, everything was just falling apart. But during, again, that divine intervention of an experience, Jesus saved my life. And I'm not saying this in a religious context, like, oh, Jesus saved my life and I'm healed, or I see life differently. It was some form of a divine intervention, and I'm not knocking it, if you had that kind of experience, that's by far not my intention. There was just some form of divine intervention of an experience that I literally could not describe or put into words. I've tried to talk about it. I've tried to write philosophies about it, and I can't seem to put it into words. But there was some form of divine intervention of an experience where I began to see Jesus as not Jesus, but as my brother. He was the one that I prayed to. He was the one that saved me and gave me the lifeline that I needed. He was the one that, over time, he was the one that said, let me take you to my Father. And that is when I really began to love him. And I learned when Jesus was like, let me take you to the Most High. Let me take you to my dad, to my Father. That is when I discovered my ultimate purpose, where I have been called according to his purpose. The purpose in terms of, I have this life, but I also have certain abilities, talents, gifts. I have a unique radiance of light that God is going to help me not only perish my shadows, but is going to help me become a lighthouse for those who too are lost out at sea.
Thank you so much for sharing such a profound and personal journey. It's incredibly inspiring to hear how you found purpose and strength through such a challenging time. Your story is a beautiful testament to the idea that even when we feel lost and overwhelmed, there's a greater purpose unfolding for us. And it's a powerful reminder that our struggles can lead to a great elite, not just for ourselves, but for others as well. Thank you for being so open and sharing that with everyone.
Then it says, this involves God using every aspect of a believer's life to make them more like Christ. Now, my interpretation with this is when it says to make them more like Christ, is as I was navigating this season, obviously it wasn't like a switch, it wasn't like a snap of a finger where everything changed. No. It was, I was just gifted with enlightenment, newfounds of wisdom, an alternative perspective on how to perceive life as I was going through this divine intervention of an experience. And as I started to navigate this process, then this is when I began to really, really, really focus on Jesus, who again I call my brother. Then I really, really, really started to develop that connection with the Most High, with God, who I call Dad. And as I was navigating this process, I began to understand on what it is like when it says make them more like Christ, because I began adopting and incorporating the way Jesus moved through life. And I began to take inspiration from it. How did he treat people who couldn't do nothing for him? How did he show up for people in ways that was so profound that even till this day, his legacy, the impact of his words still remain? I began to develop a connection and focus on how God was. How did he speak? How did he treat people? Not just those who could do something for him, but those who couldn't do anything for him. And I began to focus and fall in love by the way he began to move through life. To put it simply, Jesus led by example, and he became a source on who I too would love to become.
That's such a beautiful insight, and it really highlights how our journeys can lead us to deeper understanding and transformation. And it's amazing how the process of becoming more like Christ isn't always about grand, immediate changes, but rather those subtle, profound shifts in perspective and behavior that align us more with love, compassion, and grace. Your journey is truly inspiring, and I'm sure it will resonate with so many people who are going through their own struggles. Thank you again for sharing that with us.
So to close out today's episode is Romans 8:8. God's plan for you is always the best. Sometimes the process is. Let me re-say that. I'm so sorry. Romans 8:8. God's plan for you is always the best. Sometimes the process is painful and hard, but don't forget that when God is silent, He's doing something for you. Trust the process. My name is Victor, aka Victor the Inspiration. I started this journey, Biblical Victor podcast, a few weeks ago. And I aspired to create a podcast style like this to develop my connection more with the divine, with God. And I also wanted to share and incorporate my story and how I can help you guys along the journey as well, because again, Jesus saved my life. God has helped me in profound ways that is indescribable. And I promised God while I was navigating this difficult season within my life, I said, and I'm covered in tears, I'm laying down, and I'm just really, really trying to bear through this storm. And all I remember is I was praying to God and I was like, Father, if you are real, please, I said, Father, if you are real, please help me get through this. And if you help me get through this season, I promise you, I will tell other people that it was you that helped me through. And it's been a few years. My psychological hold experience was in January 2020. And it's been quite the journey since then. I don't take any form of medication for my mental health. It was quite the journey. Literally from one day to the next, I was like, I'm not taking that medication no more. And that process within itself was not the easiest as well to navigate through, because obviously what I put my family through, what I put my mom through, was very ugly. And from one day to the next, where my mother's point of view, her son needed help. And he got help. And now from one day to the next, he's like, I don't need no more help in terms of taking this medication. So I had to emphasize from her point of view. And I remember just telling her, I was like, just give me a second chance. I'm not taking this medication no more. And, as some back and forth and some communication going on, she was able to understand, okay, I'm going to give you another chance. And, I'm very thankful that I had someone that was able to emphasize with where I was coming from, why I wanted to get off the medication. And it was such literally, this experience is nothing short than from a miracle, because it really was a miracle to have experienced what I had went through, and literally one day to the next, completely do a complete 180 and begin my spiritual vocation. It's been quite the process, quite the journey, but here I am several years later, and although I am not where I had hoped to be, I am definitely not where I once was. And as I was reflecting off of that conversation, that prayer, I felt inclined that it was time for me to uphold my promise with God. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. It's been quite the journey, quite the process, as you can imagine. But I really, really hope that there was a message that really, really resonated with you within today's episode. I love you guys. I appreciate you guys. And as always, remember, grow through what you go through. Much love.